Good evening, everyone, and welcome to NMP Talk Show. And this evening, we're happy to have you over and joining us. We have a special guest from all the way from Utah. Yes, uh, I could remember that now. Her name is Karalee, Karalee Garrison. But before we formally introduce her, I'm with my co-host as usual, Figile. Figile, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well now. Thank you. And thank you for having us today, as usual. Thank you for being the host and the producer at the same time. I mean, it is a fantastic job.
It is.
But hey, let's not take the time. Let's introduce our guests. Tell
Yes.
us what we are on about with today.
So this week we're still talking about autism. Remember, if you were connecting last week, we were talking about autism, and then we were
Mhm,
interviewing a special guest as well, who was living with autism. Um,
mhm.
he's a young man, and he's able to cope with autism. And this evening, we're continuing on that topic, but this time we're speaking to a mom. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, she's gonna tell us about her three children that are living with autism, how she's coping with this. I mean, if you listen to her story after this show, I promise you, you'll be encouraged. You can take on the world. You can take anything that throws your way because she did it. I mean,
Mhm,
I,
mhm.
I don't even I don't even have to exaggerate this. She did it. She's a
Yeah,
woman of steel.
yeah,
Kara,
yeah.
welcome to our
Wow.
show.
Welcome, Kara.
Thank you. I'm so
Yes.
excited to be here.
Yes.
I'm
Yes,
definitely
how's
excited to
Utah
talk about autism.
this morning for you? Is it?
Cold and
Oh,
snowy.
it's a
Wow.
nice
Yep.
weather. Hey, South Africa is raining.
Yeah, it's raining. It's been
It's
raining.
been raining for the past week.
Yes, it has. It has. Yeah. So, Kara, tell us about your story. It's a very encouraging story, like I said to the audience there. We have audience connecting on Telegram. We have audience on Twitter as well. Are you also connecting on TikTok, Figile?
We are connected on TikTok
Yes.
as well.
So we do have an audience who will be happy to listen to you
Awesome.
and get encouraged from you. So over to you, Karen. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. So I'll start
Mm.
with where we're at now. My husband and I have three kids. They are 12, 11, and 8. My oldest and youngest are high functioning on the autism spectrum. So my oldest, she's high functioning. She really, really struggles with her ADHD. She mostly struggles with executive functioning skills.
Mhm.
So she's now in seventh grade, and well, frankly, she's failing half her classes, and I just cannot get her motivated. Like all she wants to do is read all the time,
Mhm.
all day long. She's very calm. She's generally very well behaved, except for she just doesn't want to
Mhm.
do her
Mhm.
schoolwork. My second is Joshua, and he's 11, and he's severely autistic. I have a really great story I'll tell you in a minute about. He used to be entirely nonverbal, and now we cannot get him to shut up. It's been quite a miraculous story. But he's very he perseverates on one topic, right? He's got childhood apraxia of speech, so he's kind of hard to understand. But when he talks, it's not so much communicating, it's
Mhm.
demands. But what he's demanding is things we can't give him. Like he wants grandma and grandpa to come with us to the pool tomorrow, and they live 4 hours away and 12
Wow.
hours away, like each set. So he's going, okay, they're coming to the pool tomorrow, and I'm going, probably not. They're probably not going to come. So he's very, very in my face all the time. He has his own way of telling jokes. He thinks he's so hilarious, and it's beautiful to
Mhm.
watch him laugh. But he's the one who will be with me
Yeah.
forever. He's the one who will never move out.
Wow.
Will need care forever. And then my youngest is Benjamin. Yeah, oh, and I don't know how I missed this. Joshua was also
Oh,
type 1
Oh,
diabetic,
okay.
which is goes into that story. And so yeah, he's got quite a story, and I'll tell that one in a little bit. And then my youngest is Benjamin, and he's 8, and he is also high functioning, but my other two were diagnosed around 3, which was about as early as they could be. Benjamin wasn't diagnosed until he was like 6, because before that he had an ADHD diagnosis and an
Mhm.
ODD, if you're familiar
Mm-hmm.
with ODD. And now he got his autism diagnosis, but his autism diagnosis is actually PDA, which a lot of people have never heard of. It stands for pathological demand
Okay.
avoidance. And that one falls under the autism spectrum, but ODD doesn't. But they're very, very
Mm,
similar. And
mm,
PDA is kind of an anxiety
okay.
based
Okay.
ODD. Well, so he struggles with violent outbursts, and he frequently takes those out on me. Whenever things are just not going his way, he wants to hurt people.
Mm,
He wants to get really violent, and so it's really interesting as I've seen my low functioning child, and for so long, like he was my hardest. He was so difficult, and then nowadays, my higher functioning youngest, in a lot of ways, is more difficult, and it's really interesting to see how just different needs have different levels of difficulty at
mm,
different times. And then one thing that we haven't mentioned yet is actually my husband's on the autism spectrum, which he's only just come to realize in the last few years. We've been married 14 years, and he's been disabled for about a
Wow.
okay.
decade. And so for a really long time, I was caretaker for him as well as the
Okay.
three kids. And that was a really difficult time. And he's actually recently gone through quite a incredible, miraculous healing transformation. And he is able to work he's been at
Oh,
his
that's
job for
good.
6 months, and he's doing amazing at it. And this is the first time in a decade he's been
I,
physically
I, I
capable
listened
Okay.
to
of
your
working.
previous podcast. You speak so highly of him. I really felt the love that you have for him, and just to hear that he's
Oh,
moving
thank you.
on, with a job now. It must be
Mm-hmm.
heartwarming for
Yeah.
you, hey?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's so difficult when you're the man, and you're supposed to
yeah.
be the one who provides
Mm-hmm.
for your family and takes care of everyone, and you can't move. So his disabilities range from severe debilitating PTSD, anxiety, depression, the
Wow.
whole the whole mental works, right? But he has a um, genetic chromal defect called sorry, what's it called? It's called familial episodic
Okay.
ataxia, and that has meant that for several years, he would collapse anytime he got stressed out. And that could be emotional stress from the kids or physical stress. He couldn't vacuum because it was too stressful. He couldn't stand to do the dishes. He would collapse, and he would shake really badly, and he couldn't speak well. Like his speech would go away. Like he would be stuttering, and he couldn't speak. And so I would have to kind of carry him to bed, and then he'd be in bed for several days before he was able to do his normal activities again. And so just having that was really, really a struggle for him emotionally and mentally,
Mm-hmm.
because he, felt like he needed to do all these things that he just could not do. And so for a really long time, that took a huge toll on our
Sure.
family.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you want, I can kind of start from the beginning, and we can kind of do
You
a
know,
briefer
I'm
summary
listening
then.
at you sharing the story, and I get so emotional, and that's just me. I'm wondering, how are you doing? How have you been coping? Are you coping?
Yeah, and you know what? It's so funny because I actually haven't mentioned this yet. So we've been through hell and back in the last, we'll call it a decade, but it's been more like 12,
Mm-hmm.
14 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? it's been
It's a
it's been
journey.
a journey.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of stuff thrown at us that is just pretty severely traumatic and kind of unimaginable. And here I am, and I'm a singer songwriter. I've got 5 singles that are out and a Christmas album, and my full album's
Uh,
coming out in the next couple months,
Wow.
and it's going to be incredible, and I'm so
Wow.
excited.
your background is
I've
giving it
had my
away.
podcast for a little over a year, right?
Actually, I was looking at the background and I'm like,
Right?
okay, maybe she likes music. So you are even a producer of your own music.
Yeah.
You're a songwriter. Hmm.
Yeah. I've been learning how to produce my own music. So everything that's out
Wow.
right now, I did all the
Wow.
production, I did all of the recording, I did all of it
Oh, wow.
on my
There
own
goes Noah's
because
job,
you
eh?
have to
Yeah,
feed the
man.
kids.
I'm just back up.
Well, actually, that's what I'm waiting for on my album, I actually have people I'm partnering with to
Okay.
do some of my
Okay.
instrumentals live. And so that's why it's taking a little longer to get my album out. And I'm really excited because it's really, first, I'm really used
Yeah,
to
I
doing
can
things all by
imagine.
myself.
I can
I've spent
imagine.
a very long time of like, I'm the only one I can rely on. I have to be able to do it all myself. And so I spent the last couple of years learning how to do those
Hmm.
production skills. And now I'm trying to go, okay, I
Yeah.
can get help on this. There are
Yeah.
people who know more than me
I had to learn the
who
hard
can
way
make
It
this
too.
takes
even
a strong
better.
person to realize
So
that,
that's
eh?
been,
I learned the hard way too. It is.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
hard one.
Mm,
It's a hard one to learn. So then I also have my podcast, which I adore. It's called Seeking Sunshine. And I
mhm,
get to interview people
Hmm.
who've been through hard things. And we talk
yeah.
about how they found
Hmm.
sunshine in the hard times. And that's been going for a little over a year. And I don't have anybody doing anything of
Mm,
that. That one's just me as well. And then actually, just recently, actually this last week, I launched my self care coaching business for
Wow.
burnt out moms because I've spent so long going,
mm,
how do I take everything
Hmm.
I've learned, everything I've been through, and use it
Others.
to help
Wow.
other people? Because I really was like, I don't know how to do that. And finally, it just kind of all fell into place. And I've gotten my certifications. And so now I'm a self
oh,
care
Hmm.
coach for burnt out
congratulations.
moms, and I
Wow.
love it.
Congrats. So
That's
it
fantastic.
is. It is. So Kara,
Hmm.
can I call you Kara or Karalee?
Yeah,
um,
yeah, it doesn't matter. That's fine.
let's start with your firstborn child. When you first realized, or the journey, if you may, just take us on a journey on how you found out and how you start dealing with it, and then we'll just carry on with the 2 year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. So first I want to say that I was really young when I got married. I met and married my husband when I was 18 and a half.
So the half is
And it
important.
was kind of a whirlwind romance.
The half
Oh
is
yeah, because when you're
important.
18, well, and what's really crazy about that story is we met and married in
Whoa!
7 weeks
Oh,
from the time we met to when
oh,
we
okay.
got married. So that was a little bit crazy. And here we
Wow!
are
You're
14
still
years later, and I
together.
can
I
tell you that,
mean,
it's
Wow!
hard and
it's a
it
story
takes
to tell
time
on
and
its
sweat.
own, eh?
But I know why.
It
Kara,
is,
I know
yeah. And
why
so
you married in
when
7 weeks. You looked at that hunk and you said, "I cannot let him go." I haven't seen him, but I heard you talk about him.
I just knew, I just knew. Yes, he's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love him. Uh, so we had our first about a year and a half later. We were married in 2008, and she was born in spring of. So we were married in like fall of 2008,
Mm,
and she was
Okay.
born in May of 2010. Um, and everything was fine, everything was normal, and then my second was born 14 months later,
mm,
so I had two
Oh.
little ones at the same time. And so Aurora was about two and a half, and she just wasn't talking, and I didn't really notice anything because
Mm-hmm.
I was super young. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
anything about autism, but we lived near my parents and they watched my two frequently, and my mom was going, she's not
Mm-hmm.
speaking the way she should be talking a lot more
Mm-hmm.
by now. And so we went to the pediatrician, and at that point she was about two and a half and Joshua was about one. And I was like, okay, she's not really talking the way she should. She's got a couple of words, but she's not really putting them together. And he's like, all right, I guess we'll send her over to speech. And I was like, oh hey, but wait, Joshua, who's one, doesn't have a
mm,
single word,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have anything. And he was like, oh, blow. He just totally blew me off with Joshua and was like, he'll grow into it. He's young. He's a boy. Boys talk late, right? Joshua didn't
Mm-hmm.
talk for 7 years. So him blowing him off was one of my struggles with doctors and autism and understanding and learning that moms
mm,
really do know.
Wow.
mm,
Right? And so at about Aurora was about two and a half, Joshua was about one and was about 18 months, and we started they sent us over to speech therapy, and I got a phone call and they wanted to schedule some thing with me, and something about it didn't feel right, and so I didn't schedule it. I was like, there's something wrong with this. I don't like this. And now that I look back at it, I'm like, that was actually probably totally normal. but but now, I'm grateful that I followed that, you know, intuition of like, this doesn't feel right. Because what happened was a friend recommended a different company that did early intervention services.
Mhm.
So with or without a diagnosis, they came in to
Okay.
evaluate and
Okay.
did early intervention services. And because I went through them, we didn't just work on speech, we worked on everything. And they hands down took Joshua. They were like, they did
Mm.
the evaluation and they were like, he's not doing these newborn skills. He doesn't look at
Mhm.
you when he talks. He doesn't turn when you call his name. He's not doing all of these basic skills. And Aurora's always been higher functioning and Joshua's always been lower functioning. So it was like, if she needs it, he
He needs
definitely
it. Oh.
does. And so she was about, we'd only been doing that for like 6 months, maybe, of like having people come in our home and do early intervention. And then they were like, okay, she's turning 3. And this company in California was absolutely incredible. Um, they're called Tri Counties Regional Center. And they just were like an umbrella company that did everything. They held my hand through every
Mhm.
single step. And they said, okay, we are going to bring a psychologist to your home and he's going to evaluate Aurora for autism
Mhm.
now that she's 3. And I
Yeah.
was like, autism? I didn't know anything. And so this guy comes to my house and it's just me and the kids because my husband was
Mhm.
working. This was before he was disabled, and she was diagnosed with
Wow.
autism. And I was astounded because I didn't really believe it. And I spent hours crying because I was home by
Mhm.
myself when I got this information, right? But everyone I talked to, my mom and my husband were like, no, no, that can't be right.
Mhm.
No, there's no way. She's so this and this. And again, that's one of the things is like, she's a girl, and autism in girls does not
The
present
same
Boys.
the
way.
same way it does in boys. Yeah, it's very different. And so she was diagnosed with autism, and I was going, this doesn't, we're all kind of going, I don't know,
Mhm.
autism, really? So at that point, she started going to preschool, and she really like the special ed preschool. And at first, she was really struggling, and so they put her in a. They first tried to put her in like a small class that just had like, it was just a couple hours
Okay.
2 times a week, and she hated it, and she would scream the whole time, and I'd sit outside the door like because she would just
Mhm.
scream
Mhm.
and scream. And then we put her in a full-time preschool class 5 days a week, like 4 or 5 hours a day, whatever it was, and she
Wow.
Mhm.
immediately loved it.
Okay.
No
Okay.
problems. And so while we were in one of these IEP meetings for her, I mentioned, and apologies because you asked me about my daughter, but their
That's
stories
okay.
are
It's
so
okay.
No, you
intertwined.
can share
My
them.
first and my second. And they're very intertwined. And so I'm going, sitting there in their IEP trying to deal with Joshua, and I'm going, he is so hard. I don't know. Like, he is
Mhm.
driving me up the wall. Like, he would not let me sit down on the
Wow.
couch. He wanted me standing up in the kitchen all the time. He wouldn't let me sit on the couch in the living room without screaming. And he was like
Wow.
2. And so then this amazing company was like, okay, let's get you some ABA services. And so they brought ABA in for both of my kiddos. And it was hard because for ABA they stood and held Joshua while and made me sit
What is
while he
ABA?
screamed,
What is ABA?
but it was ABA is it's a very very common popular therapy for autism. It stands for Applied Behavior
Okay.
Analysis.
Okay.
So they basically go in and they look at the behavior and they say, can we change what happens before, or can we change
Mhm.
what happens
Mm.
after so that this behavior
Okay.
becomes more
Okay.
appropriate?
Okay.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? So we've been doing ABA since then. Almost straight since then, that was
Okay.
Wow.
2013.
And it's still going on.
So we've been doing ABA for about a decade. Actually,
Okay.
no, they just dropped
Mhm.
us, which is a whole
Um.
different
Okay.
story. They dropped us because of my youngest's violent behavior,
Oh.
and it's its own
Okay.
story. So we'll get there. And so Aurora was diagnosed with autism, and we were doing ABA for both of them. And then we were kind of, my husband was having his struggles, and um, he was collapsing and he was in tons of pain. We had other kind of family issues going on, and we ended up moving from California to Texas because we kind of needed to start
Okay.
over. With We almost got divorced. We almost didn't make it through that year. It was quite a struggle, and we needed to start over, right? So we moved to Texas, which is where his
Okay.
parents lived, and we decided that, and I was pregnant with our third, and he was born in 2014, and that August. So in 2014 February we moved out to Texas. I got all the kids situated in school and preschool and all the things, which was its own battle because in Texas they don't have a company that holds your hand through the whole
Hmm.
thing. You just have to
Mm, mm,
figure it all out. And so we decided that we were going to have Joshua needed a diagnosis because he was turning 3, and we decided to have Aurora re-diagnosed because we were still
That's
kind of
true.
like, what?
yeah.
She doesn't really
Mm.
have
Yeah.
autism. So in August we so in and I guess I should mention in May my youngest was born, and his birth was extremely traumatic. He almost died, and that's its
Sure.
own story, and it's quite a
Sure.
dramatic one. But so in August, we went in to get Aurora and Josh diagnosed and re-diagnosed, and Joshua was easily diagnosed with autism, and Aurora was diagnosed with something else called social pragmatic communication disorder, which is like autism without the behavior component, except for that you can't get any services with it and nobody knows what it is, so it's kind of
Wow.
useless as a diagnosis.
Oh.
And we have this interesting story in this kind of miraculous dynamic of when Benjamin was born and almost died, he got sent to a developmental pediatrician that only took newborns and their siblings. So, because he almost died and he left the hospital with a clean bill of health and got sent to this developmental pediatrician, my other two were able to get in to the developmental
Okay.
pediatrician, and it was like life changing because they were able to start
Mm-hmm.
trying meds.
Mm.
They were able to
Mm-hmm.
start doing all these things. So a few months after Aurora got this social pragmatic communication disorder diagnosis, and I'm going, this is a useless diagnosis. We can't get ABA. We can't get any services. The Dutch doesn't qualify for anything with this. I went to the developmental pediatrician and I was like, here's a list of all of the behaviors that should qualify her for autism. Because and another facet to the story, I was doing college online, and I did a big huge report about the
Okay.
DSM-5. So I did a big
Okay.
research report on the DSM-5. So I was like, okay, I know what the DSM-5 says you have to
Yes.
have
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm.
qualify you for
Mm-hmm.
autism. So let me write out all the reasons and all the evidences. And because I was able to do that, the developmental pediatrician was like, I can turn this diagnosis into an autism diagnosis. Here you go.
Wow.
Wow.
So she's only like maybe 5 at this point, 4 or 5, and she's had 3 different diagnoses,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? And since then, she's had to have another one because they decided it expired
Mm-hmm.
or something. I don't know what was up with that. They were like, "Oh, it's been 8 years, so this diagnosis doesn't count anymore." So they made us get a new one. So she actually has had another autism diagnosis
So
since that
when they do the
time,
diagnosis, what do they
which was
do?
just like last year.
Is it something painful?
So it depends. And what's funny is it's no, and it's actually drastically
Mm.
different depending on where you go because she's been diagnosed 4 different times. Joshua's only been diagnosed once, and Benjamin's been diagnosed once. So that's
Yeah,
seven,
you know, I'm trying
seven
to
different
understand.
diagnoses
Sorry,
we've gone
Kara. I'm
through.
trying to understand. You mentioned a DS-5 form that has to do with the mental illness. Is autism related to mental illness?
It's so the DSM-5 is the diagnostic something manual.
No,
it's the
I
it's
understand.
the
Yes, I understand
things
what it
that
is.
they
So I
use.
just
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
know if
And on
it's related to that, because I hear that after a couple of years it was dismissed as in like the
Invalid. Mm.
diagnoses that were done previously are now
Invalid.
expired.
Mm.
You know, so I'm trying to understand that.
yeah, It was just for ABA services. I think that
Okay.
they decided
Okay.
her diagnosis needed to be
Okay.
redone. Um, I think it was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. No.
silly,
No. I
honestly.
mean, yeah.
And is it? I think it just depends on who you talk to. So the DSM-5 is important because it does do
Yes.
the diagnose. That is the
To
tool they
diagnose.
use to
Yes. Yes.
diagnose
Yes. Yes.
lots of different
Uh huh.
mental illnesses. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it's related.
Yeah.
Is
All
it? I
right.
don't
No,
know.
that's
Is it a
fine.
mental illness? Probably not really, but
Yeah.
it just
I mean,
depends
they were
on.
using
It's
the
more
same
like a
form.
you. It depends, right? I know, and it just depends because it's really autism is drastically different from person to
I
person,
see. Yes.
right? I mean, like, yeah, and so it's like in one person maybe, but in
It's
another person
different.
definitely not.
Yes.
In
Yes.
some case, in so many high functioning cases, it's just kind of a different wiring of the
Hmm.
brain. And the only reason it's a problem is because our society's been set up for a very
Yeah.
specific kind of person. That kind of person is not the
Yeah.
ADHD
Yeah.
autism
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
profile,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
right?
I think
And
I
so that's
understand
why it's
why they were
a
using it
problem.
because same as mental health is different from person to person.
Yeah.
If I'm diagnosed with something, it will be different from another person. So I think it makes sense as to why they were using it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You no, I
Yeah,
just needed to
absolutely.
understand that. Carry on
Mhm.
with your story. Hey.
Oh yeah, yeah. No worries. So we're in the middle of 2014, and Josh was diagnosed. Oh, I know. Oh, so now we're in early 2015, where Aurora got re-diagnosed, and this is the part of the story where other things were happening. We got the kids into school. We tried some meds till we found some that really helped. I mean, Joshua was at the point where he could not sit at a table for 2 minutes. He just literally he would spend
Wow.
all day
Mhm,
opening and closing
mhm,
doors
Doesn't
without
that have
end.
to do with
And
ADHD?
like his teachers are saints.
Because I,
Sure, but ADHD is hand
yeah,
in
that's
hand with
that's what I
autism.
had last weekend. It was the first time I had that. That when you're diagnosed with autism, you most likely would have ADHD, but not the
Autism
other way around.
autism's almost Yeah, autism is
Okay.
almost an umbrella term. If you have autism, you almost, I mean, it's not 100%, but it's like 90%
mhm,
ADHD, sensory
mhm.
processing disorder, maybe OCD. That one's a little like less,
Okay.
but like all there's so
That
many
falls
other
under
things that it's like
that.
if you get
Okay.
the autism diagnosis, you don't
Mm.
even need an ADHD diagnosis because
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
counts, right?
Yeah.
So um, so 2015, so at that time we had been in Texas for a year, so we had been on the wait list for a year to get ABA services. And so I was taking my two little kids. I mean, they were in first grade, and and first and second, right? And they would go to school all day, and then they would go to ABA for
Mm.
4 hours every
Okay.
afternoon. I'd pick them up from school an hour early. So we were gone all day, and it was brutal. But in Texas, when we lived in Texas, we had gotten ABA under a grant because it wasn't covered
Medical
under
aid. Mm-hmm.
insurance yet.
Mm-hmm.
We got a grant, and the grant was 2 years lifetime. So you get 2 years, and then you must be cured because that's all you
Wow.
get for the
Oh
rest of your
no.
life. So
You
we
had
were
to
getting,
make the
Is it per
yeah,
family
it was a
or per
little
person?
ridiculous, but we were taking
Per person.
per
Okay.
person. So both of my kids
Okay.
were getting this grant, and so they were going to ABA for 4 hours a day. And I had an infant at home with my husband who was rapidly going downhill. That was the year when he was in the hospital and admitted to the hospital every month that year for something
Wow.
different. Actually, like once he almost died from asthma, and he almost intubated him. He had a hemiplegic migraine where he was paralyzed in his whole body. He just had thing
Mm.
after thing after thing, and it was a crazy year. And that year ended with him having back surgery, and they put a spinal stimulator in his back to help with back pain. And it was just kind of one of those years we just
Yeah.
survived barely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next few years were kind of the same. And as Benjamin grew up, I was going, oh my gosh, this is the hardest kid ever. because even though I had my severely autistic nonverbal Joshua,
Mhm.
Benjamin was so hard. Like, he was so hard, and everyone kept telling, like, I tried to get him into preschool, and they were like, "No, he doesn't qualify.
Sure.
He's too smart. He can do all these things. He can talk and whatever." And I was like, "You don't understand. He's so hard." But I had no reasoning, so he had no diagnoses, and I was like, "This cannot be normal," because he was so
Mhm.
defiant. Even as soon as, like, literally by 6 months old, you could see the pure
Oh,
defiance in
wow.
this kid's eyes. As soon as he could start moving and doing anything, he was so
Sure.
defiant. It was unbelievable. And so we kind of go on, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit. Life was hard. My husband couldn't work. He was disabled. I was going crazy. Life was just
Mhm.
really hard. 2018, my husband finally got approved for
Okay.
disability, which was a huge blessing because we'd had
Before
zero income
that.
before that, which is
Mhm,
pretty hard to
mhm.
live on. So 2018 comes, and we start getting this. We're very religious, and we just had this really strong feeling of we need to move back to Utah. We need to move back to Utah and
Mhm.
finish our degrees at college because that's where we had met.
Okay.
And we had left before we finished our degrees. And I'm going, I hate Utah. I don't want to move back to Utah. We lived a block away from his parents who were helping us all the time. And if we moved to Utah, we would be next to nobody, no
Okay.
family. The closest family is his, 90-year-old grandmother who lives an hour
Wow.
away. Like, she's not a ton of help with our really,
Mhm.
really difficult kids. And so we got the SSI back pay, so we actually had the money to move. And we moved up to Utah. And I had this before we moved, I had this, conversation with God, as it were, right? And I was like, are we gonna be okay? Like, I know you told me to do this, but are we gonna survive this? Like, are we gonna be okay? I don't see
Mm.
how we're gonna be okay. We're moving away from all the doctors. We're moving away from
All the
all
support that
everything
you
we
are
have
getting
established here.
currently to
Like,
like zero support.
yeah. And I got this really clear answer of it's not just going to be okay, it's going to be amazing.
Okay.
So we did it. And then what followed was one of the worst years of our
Mhm.
lives. So 2018, right before the pandemic, right about like halfway through 2018 to halfway through 2019 was about the worst. That and 2013 were our two worst years when everyone was diagnosed and like all that stuff went on with my husband. And it was 2018, right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, this is easy compared to the last year we had. The worst thing is we have to sit home and do nothing.
Mhm.
This is easy. I can handle this. So 2018, we moved up to Utah. And the first house we tried to move into, um, they refused to fix some very dangerous things on the property, and then they stole 3 grand from us because we had never stepped foot in, but we had paid rent for like a couple months, and it,
Oh no.
as they make you do, and they refused to give it back, and it was that sucked. And then we moved into this other house, and I was like, this is it, this is my miracle house. And moving someplace like where you don't live there and you can't go like just
Mhm,
look at
mhm.
houses, like
Can be
that's
difficult.
really hard. But then
Yes,
when you have
yes.
like my husband was like 32 walking on a cane. Like, he could not
Mhm.
walk upstairs. So we could not have any place that had stairs. And then I had a screaming, how old was Josh? 7, a 6-year-old, because he was about to turn 7. And a screaming six-year old severely autistic son who I was like, we can't just like live in someone's basement. Like,
Doesn't really make
it
sense.
just
Yeah.
doesn't work. So I thought we found what I thought was our miracle house, and it was just
Mhm,
perfect for us, except for
mhm,
some
mhm,
things
mhm.
that went
Just a
wrong.
second.
So
I
I'll
just
get
need
to
to
that.
know. Sorry,
But I
Cara.
was
I
so
just need to confirm. I think he has an issue with his
yeah,
internet.
he dropped out.
Just to make sure that as we continue recording as we speak. Just hold on for me. Hold that up. So that I just confirm. Okay, let's proceed. Sorry about that. Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
No worries, I totally understand. So yeah, I don't know how you guys do this live. That's incredible. That's like a
I
feat
mean,
to like do it live.
in our country currently, we get these power cuts at certain times. So, it's a bit challenging, but we're still enjoying it. We're still enjoying it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Yeah,
very
that's
impressive, is
true.
what I'm saying.
That's true. Yes.
So, so 2018, we move up to Utah. We finally find a place to live
Mhm.
that I called our miracle house. My brother actually got married, and we drove off to the coast to go to his wedding. And after that, I was like, we're never traveling again.
I just wanted to
Traveling with
know.
these
I mean, you're
kids is
traveling
so
with your
hard.
husband and your three kids, that cannot really stay in the
Yeah, I mean, my
car.
husband
How
gets,
was the drive? What
yeah.
was the distance first? How
Oh, it
how
was.
long was the distance?
We've been on worse. It was
Oh
probably
no,
10
I
hours
cannot stand
ish.
4 hours
So it
alone.
wasn't too
Just
bad.
me.
No, it was several. Well, and my husband had finally been diagnosed with ADHD. He'd finally been diagnosed with PTSD, like all the things. He was on like 12 different
Yeah.
medications. He was walking on a cane at
Wow.
32, you know, disabled according
Mhm,
to the
mhm,
government,
mhm.
right? It was a thing. So we moved in 2018. We moved up to Utah to go finish school. We got our house. We went on this trip. We'd only been there for about 2 weeks. We had just started school a week before that. Went off to this thing. It was so hard. We came back and I was like, I'm never traveling again. And at this time, both my husband and I were full time in
Yeah.
college with
At
three
home,
kids
not
at three
not
different
kids that
schools.
can cope to say, I can get you somebody to look after you so that I can study.
Yeah,
How did you cope?
yeah. Well, and let me just tell you because it
Yeah.
gets way worse. So we had our youngest was in preschool like a
Hmm.
few days a week, and so that was in August when we moved, and then
Hmm.
October, the very beginning of October, I had my 7-year-old Joshua. He turned 7 in July, and he was entirely, completely
Hmm.
nonverbal. Um, Not even a single that meant anything. They were in ABA, they were in school, they had all the things. And he was really difficult. He bounced off the walls. I mean, he was on he was on Adderall, and that was helping him like not quite bounce off the walls, but he was
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
hyper
Hmm.
all the time. This is my kid who would I would go to park, and before I could put my car in park, he'd be out the front door through the parking lot opening someone else's
Oh,
car. This is my kid who wrecked our truck while the keys were out and it was off. He wrecked our truck.
wow.
This is my kid who was so hard. And he woke up one Saturday morning in October and he looked like death. He was so sick, and he just was like, his eyes were all sunken in. Oh, this is a hard story to tell. His eyes were all sunken in, and you could see all of his ribs. He just came out in his underwear, and you could see his big thigh gap. And I was like,
What was
when
happening?
did this happen? When did he lose all this weight? Yeah, it actually, because I asked his teachers later, and I was like, did he look like this when he was at school yesterday?
No.
And they're like, no, it was like overnight,
How?
all of a sudden, just like dropped a ton of weight. And at the time, the only thing I could compare it to was the pictures I had seen of people who had survived Auschwitz and like the camps, and he looked so skinny. And we had been through, I mean, he's been underweight for most of his life. We had tried
Mm.
meds to try to help him gain weight because he wouldn't eat
Mm,
anything.
mm.
But all of a sudden it was just like it was like it was a gut punch of like how awful he looked. And my mama brain was like freaking out, like, this is bad. This is something's really, really
Yeah.
wrong here. And my logical brain was like, he's just sick. He just needs to
Mhm,
sleep. He'll get
mhm,
through it. And he laid on the floor in a ball on the living room floor and just like laid
mhm,
there
mhm.
for days. And he puked a little bit, but it wasn't very much. And he was still drinking. And it was really a weird thing because this is totally not him. This is my
Mhm,
kid who
mhm,
bounces
mhm.
off the walls, and here he was letting me hold him. He never let me hold him ever.
Oh,
He never sat in my lap and let me snuggle with him ever, and he like let me hold him, and I was
oh.
like, this is kind of nice.
You're
He's
not
not
gonna
bouncing
do
off the
it.
walls, but something's wrong. Right. And so that was a Saturday morning. So Monday I took him to the pediatrician and I was like, I had to carry him into the pediatrician's office because he was
Mhm.
too weak to walk on his own. And he lays on the floor of their office and she doesn't even look at him and she's like, yeah, it's just a bug, he'll get over it in a couple days. And I'm like, we've been through every illness, I have 3 kids, we've been through
Mhm.
lots of illnesses,
Mhm.
this is different. And she just was like, yeah, well, I mean, I guess we could take a blood sample and get blood work done, but it's really hard to get blood from a kid with autism, so let's not, just give it a few more days and then come back.
Wow.
And so she sent us home with nothing, and we did nothing. Hmm. Yeah.
How were they feeling? How was the doctor's mood on the day?
Yeah. Right. Well, and so we're, again, my husband and I are both full time in college, and so we were kind of trading off like who could miss which class to stay
Wow.
home with our son, right? Because
Yo.
our classes were all based around when they were in school, and he couldn't be in school because he was sick. So Wednesday morning, my husband was home with Joshua, and I was in class, and he texted me a picture, and somehow he looked way worse. Like his skin was gray and his eyes, it was just, he looked way worse, and I was like, nope, I'm done with this. And so I took him to the ER,
Mhm.
and they knew
What was wrong
immediately.
with him?
They knew immediately. They took one look at him and they were like, we need to check his blood sugar now. That kid has type 1 diabetes. He's in diabetic ketoacidosis and he is dying. We need to check his blood sugar now. So this is my kid who I had to carry into
Mhm.
the ER because he couldn't walk on his own. It took like 7 people holding him down because he fought so hard to get one drop of blood. He
Like you
fought like
can't.
you wouldn't believe. It took so much. I know, everything, like every last ounce of strength came out of that kid to not get his blood. So we got that prick of blood, and sure enough, his blood sugar was through the roof. And it was like, all right, they sent us to a different hospital, a bigger
Mhm.
hospital, and he was admitted, and he basically slept for 3 days, and I was in such a state of shock that I was like, you guys don't understand. He's gonna break the hospital any moment now. He's gonna come right back to his normal self, and he is going to just like demolish your hospital. He's gonna
Mhm.
change all your passwords. He's gonna change the language to Japanese. You don't know. He's gonna just. I was like, I was just, yeah, I was very, very
Yeah.
stressed out because they made you. So he was like
Mhm.
asleep, and I was like, I can't sleep. He's gonna wake up in the middle of the night and tear this place down, right? So they had someone sit at the door to make sure that he didn't do
Mhm.
anything so
Mhm.
that I could sleep. And then they made me do all these classes. Like I'm in this like very shocked kind of state, and they're like, okay, here's how you calculate how many carbs are in everything
Mhm.
ever. Here's how you prick his finger
Mhm.
7 times a day.
Mhm.
And it was like, what? So to wrap the story up, he came home. He was in the hospital for 3 days. Came home on Friday. Went back to school on Monday. And this is so he had been pee potty trained since
Mhm.
he was 3, but he had never. We couldn't poop potty train him because he was never consistent because he wouldn't
Mhm.
eat anything because he was
Mhm.
always underweight. And so his first day back at school, he pooped in the potty for the first time in his life. He had suddenly one of the things that happens when you first get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes is then you're starving for like
Okay.
3 months,
Mhm.
right? So he was eating only corn dogs. He would only eat corn dogs, but he was eating like 9 of them a day. So he was finally regular. So he pooped in the potty he was 7 years old, pooped in the potty for the first time in his
Oh.
life. And it was like, what? Within a month he could say all of his colors.
Mhm.
And his speech rapidly
Okay.
improved from the moment he was diagnosed with
Mhm.
type 1 diabetes. And now we're here 4 years later and he never shuts up,
Wow. Wow.
ever. And what's amazing is right before he was diagnosed, I had this like breakdown and I was like, we had been praying and praying and praying that he would be able to talk.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to
Mhm.
give up. This is hurting my heart to keep hoping that
Mhm.
he's going to talk. And so right before he was diagnosed, I had like given up
Mm.
on that. And then he
He's
got the
catching up with all these years when he was
yes,
not
all the
talking.
missed time. He literally he literally never stops and he's always in my face. And nowadays he says, "Mom, hug," and then he comes and gets right in my face so he can talk. So I'm trying to teach him to say, "Mom, I want to talk to you," because he's
You
just
need to
using
pay
that as an
attention to
excuse.
me right
I'm
now.
like, "Talk at me more." Yes. So that's constant. So then that same year, let's see, I actually studied opera
Okay.
for a decade about, and I was really, really hoping to get into the School of Music in college. And I had auditioned a decade before that in 2008 and didn't get in. And then I got married. And so I was like, I'm going to audition for the School of Music and it's going to be amazing. So I auditioned in December. And then a week before Christmas, our landlord, who we had never met, didn't know who he was, showed up at our door and pointed his gun in my husband's face. My husband, who already had, he thought that we did something that we didn't do. Like we didn't even know who he was. It was just this big crazy thing, and it was really bad. It kind of took my husband's PTSD from like he was managing it to
Yeah.
he never slept. He spent all night walking in circles around the house because he was so worried that this guy was going to come back. Um, So we were like, okay, we have to move. We can't stay here,
Yeah.
obviously. Right. And so I found out I did a second round of auditions, got really close, and then I found that I didn't get into the School of Music. And I had been going, this is it. This is the reason for all the hard stuff, is because I'm going to get in the School of Music and sing
Mhm.
opera. And then when I didn't get in, I was totally devastated.
Can imagine.
Um, and we had to move. And so I was doing summer school and trying to find us a place to live. But we had terrible credit and it was place after place after place fell through. And I was like, where are our kids going to go to school? And how do we get all this figured out? And as things do, they just worked out. And so in summer of 2019, we got the house we're in now. Um, and it has its issues, but it has been a
Mhm.
huge blessing. The worst thing that happened was that Benjamin got glasses during that time, which he will not wear. It's very difficult to get him to wear glasses. Let's see, Benjamin got his ADHD diagnosis. We started him on meds, and he very, very rapidly gained about 50
Mhm.
pounds. So my 8 year old is struggling with his weight, which is a really difficult thing to watch. And we stopped his meds a year ago, and he still has not been able to drop any of that. And it's like and he's so hyper that it's like, what's going on? But he finally got his autism diagnosis. We did ABA. We had all three kids in 2 hours of ABA after school every day
Okay.
at our house. So three people would come over and
I
we did
was
ABA,
about
and
to
we did
ask
that
you
for
that
about
they
a
joining
year.
one class or they get like separate classes. So you've answered that already.
They each got
Yeah.
Yeah. So they each got someone, but it was really hard to keep somebody with Benjamin because he'd have these violent outbursts and then they'd quit. So we had a really hard time keeping somebody with him. And then he was at a school, he was at a public charter school and was really, really struggling. When was that? It was after the pandemic. It was like a year and a half ago, October. So 2021, fall of 2021. He was in like second grade. He was in second grade and he was flipping over desks and throwing chairs whenever things didn't go his way. And we had to switch him to a
Okay.
behavior unit
Okay.
at a public school, which we're in the process. Actually, today's his first day starting at
Oh.
a new school to
Wow.
get out of the behavior unit
Wow.
after his behavior. And so it's been a journey. My husband graduated from college, and then I actually
Wow.
added a second major onto my degree and took another year, but I
Congrats.
graduated too. And I graduated. Thanks. I know it took me about 12 years to finish my
It's
degree. It was
not
very
long.
long
Actually,
bachelor's degree.
Kara,
I did
I'm
double
thinking
major, but
about how what you've been going
Yeah.
through. It's actually not long,
yeah.
you know. Just don't even put it on your vocab to say that it took me 12 years. No, it took me the standard time because of everything that you've been
Yeah.
through. I'm an academic, and I
Yep.
have to drop everything when I register for a year or two. So I have to drop work, I have to abandon my kids so that I focus on my studies. only, and you have
Yeah.
been registered to study. You are a mom. You
Of
are
three.
a mom of three
Yeah.
kids, and your kids have got their own different challenges. They want your attention. So, I mean, 12 years was nothing.
Don't
Hmm.
It
don't
could
forget
have taken
don't
you
forget the
like
husband
your
here.
lifetime just to finish an undergrad. So you did very well for
We
yourself.
also like kids,
I
husbands.
actually, you deserve this. Let's just go. We have to
Oh yeah, we do, we do.
yes. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
my computer is just
Right.
Is
it's
So
a
acting
mess
up on
today,
you
yeah.
today. It is okay.
But
Your
anyway,
computer
Kara,
is
that's all
jealous
right.
today.
Kara,
No
just
worries.
to change gears a little bit. We have about 8 minutes left. Can you believe an hour just went flew by like that? Um,
You know what? I'm still all ears. I'm still
yes,
listening.
yeah. And I know we haven't talked about this. I haven't asked, but I'm so eager to hear one of your songs. I don't know. Can you hit the note there? Just give us a taste, a little bit of what you have in your arsenal there.
Yeah. I'm wondering
Yeah,
if
you could.
it's
You could.
possible
Yeah.
to like share audio. Okay,
Yeah.
well, before I do that, I need to get it up.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, we
can
Yeah.
you
can.
still hear me? I'm
We can
not on the right screen
see and
anymore,
hear
so
you.
that's why I'm wondering. So the one that I would love to share with you, if I could find it, hasn't been released yet. It's actually a song that has been released, but it
Okay.
got an upgrade, and the upgrade is
Okay.
just blowing my
Okay.
mind. And so that's why here it is. So originally, I actually don't really play any instruments, and I did all the instruments myself without
Wow.
super knowing what I was doing. Um, and I'm trying to find this should be it. How do I share it? Okay, I'm just gonna share the whole thing,
Okay.
and it's gonna be my email. This is a song I wrote when I was in the
Hmm.
middle of so much. Tell me if you can hear it. It'll play. Let's see. It might not work.
It's sharing.
So if it doesn't work, you can go find this song before it was
Okay.
upgraded to it's available on Spotify, on Apple Music, but it's the old version. It's not the new version. The new version will be available soon. As soon as I get it. As soon as I get it done. Because I've got like 10 songs on my album that I'm hoping to
Okay.
release at once. Sorry, it's got 10 more
No
seconds
problem.
and it's making me download it before. I don't know. It played before. I've done this before and it's played it, but not while streaming. So this song's called Wait, and it's Don't Give Up Just Yet, Wait, and it was really about my
Hmm.
music because it
Okay.
felt
While we're
impossible
waiting for it, does
to
your husband sing too?
do music. Yes, actually, my husband studied opera, and he is also a singer songwriter,
Wow.
and so our dream is to do
Oh,
music
that's
Oh,
together.
nice.
wow. That's fantastic.
There it goes. Can you hear it? Can you hear the
Not
music?
yet.
Not yet.
Oh, you can't hear it? Oh,
Is
it's
it
playing
playing?
Hmm.
for me. I actually don't know where it's playing through.
It's actually very low.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, it's playing for
All right,
me.
that's fine. We can.
Oh, is it? Okay, well, I can turn
Okay.
the volume up. Mm. Sorry, I'm trying to get it to. I don't even know how to make it start over. Can you hear it? Let's see. Oh, I hit play. It's not going. I don't know how
No.
to get this to
All right,
work.
it's fine. We can share
It
the
is.
music later
All
on
right.
and for the recording.
Yeah, no
But thank
worries.
you so much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have five. Yeah, sorry. The five singles that are out are available everywhere. Plus, I have my
Yeah.
podcast, I always share music on my podcast, before, at the beginning and at the end.
All right.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow.
Right. We have uh, reached the end of our show, and we want to thank Kara for coming through and all the way from Utah, to share her story. We are very encouraged by her zeal, her courage, everything that she has put in raising three children, and with a loving husband as well that also has challenges, health challenges. I mean, you're a superwoman. I don't know if I were in your shoes, I would be sitting here talking about my experience with a smile. And we've seen the smile, we've seen the tears rolling down your eyes, but we're very encouraged to see that. So keep it up.
Mhm.
You're not alone out there. All the things, all the
Thanks.
blessings that you also seen, it means that you really are not alone. So never let up. Your kids love you. Your husband, I know he loves you. I haven't met him, but from what you're saying, what you talk about him, he's like a teddy
He
bear to
does.
you, a hunk of a teddy bear that really loves you. So thank you so much for this beautiful show, and we hope we're hoping that next time we might even
Absolutely.
be able to host you and your husband, if that allows. It will be fun,
Yeah.
as
It will
usual.
be fine. It will be fine.
So for your closing remarks, Figile, anything you want to share?
You know, Kara, as much as I'm not in your shoes,
Mm,
I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, but I can't even fit in a toe
yeah,
to walk the mile
yeah,
that you have walked.
yeah,
You have done a wonderful job. I hope mothers, wives out there who are going through almost similar, because
mm,
the situations are not the same,
yeah,
will get encouraged by your story as much as it has encouraged me. I'm not there yet, but now I see that whatever I go through, I can be able to overcome it because of you. You did it, you are doing it, and continue
Thanks.
being the Kara that you are. Being all smiley, you're so bubbly. You are not actually showing a depressed face to say, you know what, I'm being through a lot, I'm
yeah.
going through the most. But hey, thank you very much for actually joining us
You know,
today.
yeah, absolutely. Self care helps a lot.
It does.
It
It
makes a
Yeah,
does.
world of difference.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for everyone who joined in on Telegram, joined in on Twitter, on TikTok. We really appreciated you joining in and listening to the show.
Mhm.
We'll also have this recording of the show on YouTube, and our channel is Get Informed 2 TWO. And you can catch up all with other shows that we've had already. So thank you guys for connecting, and we hope that you have a great evening. For you, Kara, you have a great day. Thank you so much. You need internet? You need
Thank you.
physical.
That was wonderful.